Hello everyone. So in this video we're going to talk about some problems with hedonism and this will conclude our lesson on hedonism for the week. So the first one we're going to look at is called the paradox of hedonism. To set this up, we're going to look at a little argument that was presented by Schaefer-Landau, and then we're going to analyze it slightly differently and see how it turns out for us. Okay, so the first one is called the paradox of hedonism, and it starts off by assuming that this is an argument that hedonists would approve of. So it goes something like this. If something makes us better off, we should try to acquire it. Happiness makes us better off, therefore we should try to acquire it. So this is a valid argument. Valid just means it has the right structure. Valid doesn't necessarily mean that it's true or makes a good point. In logic, it just means it has a certain type of structure. Okay, but it seems that the conclusion is false. When we try to acquire happiness, we almost never succeed. And this kind of makes sense, right? Have you ever tried just to pursue being happy? Well, it seems as if then when you try to pursue only being happy, you turn out to be unhappy. You're always chasing after something else. You're never satisfied. And so the argument goes like this. If happiness is the only thing that directly makes us better off, then it's rational to single-mindedly pursue it. But it isn't rational to single-mindedly pursue happiness because when you do, you never reach it, you never obtain it. Therefore, um, it isn't the only thing that makes us better off. That is happiness, isn't. And the way this works is you see on the number one, it says that's called a premise. That number one is after the then, it says it is rational to single-mindedly pursue it. Well, if you say no to that one, it's not rational to single-mindedly pursue it. What happens then, just in the type of logic it is, you have to negate the first part, that if happiness is the only thing that directly makes us better off. So if it's not true to rationally single-mindedly if it's not rational to single-mindedly pursue happiness, then it can't be the only thing that makes us better off. But is it irrational to single-mindedly pursue happiness? I certainly think it is irrational to single-mindedly pursue happiness, but it doesn't really seem to show that this makes hedonism false. Hedonism, as you recall, is just the claim that the only thing that is intrinsically valuable is happiness or enjoyments or something like that. This argument doesn't show that that's not the case. What this argument shows is that it isn't rational to single-mindedly pursue happiness if you want to be a happy person. So this argument, the paradox of hedonism, doesn't really affect hedonism, really. The next one is called the problem of evil pleasures. And this argument goes like this. If hedonism is true, then happiness that comes from evil deeds is as good as happiness that comes from kind and decent actions. But happiness that comes from evil deeds is not as good as happiness that comes from decent actions. Therefore, hedonism is false. Now, the problem with this one is that hedonism isn't talking about morality, what is a good action. What hedonism is talking about is what makes a life go well for one. So the kind of goodness that we're talking about here isn't the kind that the objection is reaching to. The objection would affect hedonism if hedonism was claiming that the only good and moral thing to do is to have happiness, or that evil action regardless of evil actions or moral actions, happiness is the right thing to reach for, even if it requires evil actions. But we're not talking about the goodness or wrongness of actions. We're talking about what makes one's life go well. So presumably this doesn't really affect hedonism, because hedonism isn't a moral theory, a normative ethical theory. Hedonism is a value theory, talking about what makes one's life go well for him or herself. And so it could be the case that someone who does evil actions, life goes well for them if that person is having lots of enjoyments and lots of pleasure. It's not the case, though, that the person would be a moral person, the person would be bad, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what is the intrinsic value, what is intrinsically valuable. So this doesn't affect that argument. The next one is the two worlds objection by Ross. And this goes something like this. If hedonism is true, then any two situations containing identical amounts of happiness and unhappiness are equally good. Such a situation is not equally good, however, some are better than others, therefore hedonism is false. So how does this one work? So imagine two worlds, right? One world, world A and world B. World A and B have equal amounts of happiness and unhappiness. They're identical. But world B contains lots of vice, lots of evil people, people who are vice-ridden, lots of do lots of bad things and have bad characters. In world A, the people are very virtuous, right? They have lots of good character. They have very good character. It might be objected here that this is unrealistic. That someone who a world full of good people is going to have more pleasure in it than a world with bad people. But that's not what we're talking about here. You could make something up, right? Maybe there's lots of natural disasters in world A, which causes more pain, or equal amounts of pain as world B. So you have to stipulate, and you have to go with the stipulation. Because we're not questioning the experiment itself. What we're questioning is a certain type of, we're investigating or a certain hypothesis, namely whether or not hedonism is true. If it could be the case that world A and world B have equal amounts of pleasure and pain, but world B contains more bad people, then that seems to be a fair thought experiment, and it seems to be testing our hypothesis. Um, but the problem with this is that hedonism is not about worlds. World A and world B are not identical in terms of their goodness, but world A and world B are equal in terms of the amount of value. So world A has equal amounts of happiness as world B, but world B has more vice than world A. What this means then is that world B is not as good of a world as world A, but we're evaluating lives of individuals, we're not evaluating worlds. So this objection ultimately fails as well. The next one we're going to look at is the problem of false happiness. And this one goes like this. If hedonism is true, then our lives go well to the extent that we are happy. It's not the case that our lives go well to the extent that we are happy. Those whose happiness is based on false beliefs have worse lives than those whose happiness is based on true beliefs, even if both lives are equally happy. Therefore, hedonism is false. Schaefer-Landau gives us an example of two women, both who are equally happy. One woman is happy and she believes that her husband is faithful to her, and that's the case. Another woman is happy and she believes that her husband is faithful to her, but it's not the case. He's cheating on her. Both women's lives are going well for them because they're equally happy. But some people will say that the second woman, the woman whose husband is cheating on her's life, is not actually going as well as the first woman whose husband isn't cheating on her because her beliefs, the second woman's beliefs, that is, are false. But hedonists are going to reject this. They're going to say, look, happiness is happiness regardless of the truth claims or the truth or falsity of the beliefs of the person that's involved. Now, this seems to be a decent reply, I think, to that particular case, but it isn't such a good reply, I don't think, to the second consideration. So, the reading this week is going to go over, part of the reading this week is on Robert Nozick's experience machine. And the way this thought experiment works is, imagine there's a virtual reality machine, and you can go to these types of places where you can plug in, and you can choose any life you'd like, um, and you can experience this life, and he says for 2 years, and at which point you can come out of the machine and go back into the real world. Well, so that's fine. So imagine, so you go into this place where you can plug into this machine, and you choose a life for yourself. Maybe you choose a life as a successful business person or something. And so you plug into the machine, and when you're in the machine, when you're plugged into it, you don't know that you're plugged into it. You're just experiencing the life as it is, uh, as you see it to be. So you plug into the machine, and you live this wonderful life with a wonderful family and friends who love you, and you're very successful at business and all this stuff. And then you wake up, right? Or you come out of the machine and you can choose another life, right? Well, I think at this point you're probably very depressed, right? You come out and you're like, well, that wasn't real. Wow, that's sad. I miss my family, right? Um, not to ward off that objection, I think maybe we say this. Imagine that you could choose to plug into this machine and you can live in it for your whole life if you'd like. So imagine two people, person A and person B. Person A goes into this machine and plugs in for his whole life, and he lives he experiences wonderful reality of having a life full of success and no pain. His wife and his children love him, his friends adore him, extremely successful in whatever he decides to do. He's very well respected by everyone. Now imagine the other individual who doesn't plug into machine but lives a life, and his wife loves him, his children love him. He has regular fights with his wife like everyone does, and his children sometimes are mean, disrespect him, and they love each other. They love each other anyway. He is well respected at work, pretty successful. He's respected and wins awards and all this stuff. Um, Now, which one of these two people would you like to be? The one person, the second person, person B, his life is connected to the real world, and he is very extremely successful, and he does have a wife and children and friends who love and adore him, but he does have some pain, right? And then person A, he's in a tub plugged into a computer, and he is experiencing similar life except for without any pain. So first question, which one's life do you think went better for them? Right? Person A and person B. Person A had no pain. Person B had, pain in his life. And then the second question I have is, which one of these lives do you think went better for that individual, right? So at his, person A dies in the tub, right, of old age, and person B dies of old age with his family around him. Now, person B or A, right, guy dies in a tub. He also experiences his family around him, right? So he doesn't know uh, that he doesn't have a family. But which one of these people's lives do you think actually went better for them? Um, and to a lot of people, it seems as if person B's life actually went better for him, because person B actually was engaged in the world, had a true connection with others and true connection with the world, and actually managed to do something with his life. Person A, however, it's not really clear what kind of person A is at all. Person A is not really didn't do anything at all. Things were just happened to him, right? He experienced this program as it is. And so it seems that the first person who plugged into the machine's life actually went worse for him. And so I think this is actually a pretty interesting objection to hedonism, um, and that's worth pursuing. So go ahead and read that. It's only a few pages long, so go ahead and read Nozick's thought experiment there. He goes into some detail that we're not going to. The next objection that Schaefer-Landau brings up is called the importance of autonomy. So here it says, if hedonism is true, then autonomy contributes to a good life only insofar as it makes us happy. But autonomy sometimes directly contributes to a good life even when it fails to make you happy. Therefore, hedonism is false. Now, at this point, you might be asking, how does this make hedonism false? Well, recall, hedonism is a monistic theory of value. The only thing that's valuable intrinsically, that is good because of what it is happiness for hedonists. But if autonomy also makes a life good, makes a life go well for an individual, um, then that is also a value, an intrinsic value. And if it makes someone's life go well for them, even if it doesn't bring them happiness, then that is clearly an intrinsic value. The case that Schaefer Landau brings up is Huxley's A Brave New World. In this world, they have given, the government has given their people soma. It's a drug that makes people rather sedated, but having really um, pleasant mood all the time. They forbid close relationships because when these things break up, it tends to cause heartache and hardship for people. So it's better to have um, it's better not to have these types of relationships. Now, the citizens of the Brave New World have become complacent, animals obedient to political masters who intend on manipulating them. Though the society might well be a happier one than ours, it seems clear that something valuable is missing, is Schaefer Landau's claim. And what that is the autonomy, the ability to make your own types of decisions. So in this world, people are manipulated and controlled by their government, and they don't have the type of autonomy to self-regulate their own lives. But it certainly seems that a life with more pain in it would be much more valuable if there was also autonomy involved. So this certainly presents some sort of objection to hedonism that is worth considering. Now, the next one that is, I think, is one of the strongest ones is life's trajectory objection. And the life's trajectory objection goes like this: if hedonism is true, then overall quality of one's life depends entirely on the amounts of happiness and unhappiness it contains. Okay. Overall quality of life depends at least on one other factor, whether one's life's on an upward or downward trajectory. Therefore, hedonism is false. So in this case, you can imagine two different people. So the one is that Schaefer Landau gives is from a book called Humboldt's Gift. It's a really good book. You should check it out. And his the character that we're considering is an individual named Schwartz. Now Schwartz is a brilliant writer. So so we consider this case. So Schwartz is raised with a family that loves him, adores him, and he's quite brilliant, right? At a young age, he gains a lot of success and writes a novel that makes him famous. He ended up teaching at Princeton and Harvard for years, and people adore him. He gets lots of awards and things like that. But the last 10 years or so of his life, he was spent in increased frustration and isolation. He was addicted to drugs and alcohol and experiences severe paranoia and mental illness. And he dies alone in a seedy hotel in New York City. Um, the promise of his early life left unfulfilled. Now imagine another person, like a Jane Eyre type of story, right? So like this girl is abandoned by her family, raised in an orphanage, rejected by her peers, teased, mocked, beat, these types of things, generally hated, right? And now, as she grows older, she starts to find a purpose in life. She starts to be respected and loved, and she gets attached to a family where she's teaching the children and ends up being loved and adored by the children and loved and adored by by her then husband. And then she dies with family around her that love her. Okay. Now imagine these two cases. We have the Schwartz case and the Jane Eyre case, Jane Eyre-esque type of case. You can stipulate for the sake of our conversation that Jane Eyre and Schwartz both have equal amounts of happiness and unhappiness in their lives. Um, Now, but which, and you could posit that they both die, they have equal amounts of happiness. That's all that actually matters for hedonism. Now, which one of these two people's lives went better for them? Which one of these two people would you care to be? Most people are going to say that the person's life who went better for her is Jane Eyre's because her life was on an upward trajectory as opposed to a downward one. Schwartz, while he started high, ended very low. Eyre started really low but ended very high. And this seems to really indicate that there's more to life than just happiness. A trajectory of one's life seems to indicate that. The next argument we're going to look at is called it's the argument from multiple harms, and it goes like this: if hedonism is true, then you can be harmed by something only because it saddens you, but you can be harmed in other ways as well. Therefore, hedonism is false. So this is an interesting objection, and the point that I want to make here that Schaefer Landau makes is that sometimes sadness is a indication of some other harm that's befalled you. And for example, the athlete who lost her ability to compete or something. Now, this person who lost her ability to compete, perhaps tore a muscle or broke a leg or something, and never could come back from it. This person, she'll be saddened by this, of course, right? But the problem is that the problem is that the sadness is an indication of something that was really missed, something that was really that was is no longer there for her, and that is her ability to compete in something, to achieve something. She truly had promised to be excellent, and now she'll never be able to compete in Olympics, and she's saddened by that. But the thing is that the sadness is a symptom of something else, and that is the symptom that her life could have been better for her if she was able to compete. It's the loss. She's saddened by the loss. And so it seems then that this stipulation that her life could have gone better for her and that she lost something of value is the point that is important, because if her life could have gone better for her and if she truly did lose something, then this means that there's something else besides just happiness that makes someone's life go well for them. And this, I think, is another interesting objection to hedonism. So this is going to conclude this brief video on objections to hedonism, and I look forward to seeing what you have to say about it on the discussion boards.